Good afternoon, everybody. Excited to be here today. Thank you for joining us live on LinkedIn. My name's Sean Dwyer. I'm here from ZoomInfo, and I am joined by the great sales mind that he is, the best-selling author, a great partner to ZoomInfo, Mr. Lee Salz. How are you today, Lee?
I'm doing great, but I didn't know with that intro who you were talking about. But thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely happy to do it. Well, I'll tell you what, is your sales org set up for success? We've asked a pretty loaded question here, but it's going to make for a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious though, right, with that loaded question, if you will, right? What we have to offer sales leaders, how they can start thinking about this a little bit more, call it differently, a little bit more critically. That's what I'm really excited to get into today. And I know
Me too.
Offer and you got a lot to get into. I think the big thing I want to get into up front, right? The first thing I want to talk about today. I think this is true in any year. We can always say, hey, we're in a different selling environment than we were in 12 months ago. That's always really the case. But I'm curious to hear from your perspective, what maybe makes this year, maybe the last 12 months, different than prior years. What are we maybe facing that's a little bit different today?
Sean, you know what? We have that same conversation every single year. What's different? What's different? And I got to tell you, there's a quote that one of my CEO clients uses, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I can't take credit for it because it's his. He says, executives, business owners, salespeople, we all get a little bit confused. You see, there's the business that happens to us and the business that we make happen. Mm-hmm. So when the economy is really good, we've got some nice tailwinds, we think we're much better than we are. We hit some headwinds and we start realizing, we really haven't put that strong sales organizational framework in place and we're struggling a bit. Mm-hmm. And I remember years ago, a client of mine, one of the most prestigious minor league baseball teams. Mm-hmm. And I get calls from the owner of this team Sunday afternoon, during the week, late at night. Oh my gosh, well, one of our salespeople just resigned because the entire business was based on the salespeople. And the way I like to say it is, like your salespeople, love your sales organization framework. I'm not advocating for not being good to your people. Be great to your people. But the foundation of a successful sales organization is the framework. The people then support the framework that's been put in place. And you can make that statement this year, next year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that same approach works.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's a really important thing to call out. And I'm curious, right, because of your network and your understanding the individuals that you get to have these conversations with, many of those who have joined us today, probably eager to hear the same, right? Common themes, right? Within that, is there any one or two things that maybe stand out above all else, right? I think what I found most fascinating, Lee, about some of the things that you put out is the expressions that you use and the evolution of those expressions, right? Department, to team, to a true sales force over time. But are there one or two things that are most commonly impacting us, probably more on the internal side, based on what you're saying, that you might want to call out to the audience here today?
Well, I'll tell you, one big topic, internal, external, doesn't matter, that everyone's scratching their head saying, what do I do with this? And it's AI, right? That's this year's hot topic,
sure,
right? And there's always this new little toy that, okay, let's go play with this. So we say, let's go do everything with AI. Mm-hmm. Time out. Okay, selling is selling. We still need to have the interactions. We still need to have the activity and the behavior. But as AI evolves, these could be very helpful tools for us. I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. One of the projects I do with clients is around decision influencer analyses, those folks that influence the decision to buy what you sell. And there's two sides to that. Understanding what's keeping that individual up at night and how you can help. So what's keeping them up at night, you can go into ChatGPT and look up a manufacturing manager and say, what are the biggest challenges that a manufacturing manager is facing? And you're going to get a list of 10 to 12 of these things that will then help you to better understand and better engage with them. As opposed to in the past, you'd have to sit around and say, gosh, what's really keeping them up at night? So now you have tools like that can help you get a leg up.
Certainly, certainly. And you think about getting people to think this way, right? Like change our way, right? I think for so long, right, things start happening to us, if you will, and it's out of our control, right? There's something out
It is.
there that they did that to us. How should a sales leader start assessing internally? Like, where does somebody start? What's maybe the first order of operation there that a sales leader should go back in and maybe look in the mirror and start thinking critically about what's in place?
Well, I would probably start at the new client acquisition process, right? Because what's the role of sales? Bring in business.
Sure.
So one of the things that I see in a lot of organizations is we say we need to bring in new accounts, and we put some big number out there, and we say to the salespeople, "Go make it happen."
Yeah.
And we're missing some components of that system.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a target client profile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may not be familiar with that because you commonly hear the expression ideal client profile.
Sure.
This is a very different tool. An ideal client profile says if all the stars were to align, this is the kind of business we'd love to have. It's like a lottery ticket. It's a 1 in a gazillion chance that you're going to find one of those.
Mm-hmm.
A target client profile says this is who will perceive meaningful value in what we offer. And every sales minute, every business development minute should be spent, or better yet, invested in the pursuit of those opportunities. And I actually have a 9-component worksheet that folks that are here today can download. If you go to, this is a tough one, Sean, you ready for this? targetclientprofile.com. If you go to that domain, it's going to take you to a landing page and you can download my target client profile template. And it'll help you have such clarity on those who perceive meaningful value in what you're selling. So that's really a starting point. Every organization, I don't care what industry you're in, how big or small you are,
mm-hmm.
needs to have that profile in place because that tells the salespeople where to go.
Without question. And I think in the way that any team operates, call it your North Star, right? You need to have that.
Exactly.
That we're all working towards together and everybody's
mm-hmm.
aligned and it's very clearly defined. When there's gray area, those are inefficiencies. Those cost you money. Those will cost you people and time.
Correct.
Right? And that's really important. And I think what we're hitting at here, right? And I think what we're building to is the maturity of a sales org, right?
Absolutely.
And what we're getting to is the conversation, because I had the opportunity, right, to sit down and look at Lee Salz sales organization maturity assessment and run through it. And it's quite eye-opening to me, right? The ability to assess different levels of it and different aspects of it without throwing a blanket, we're good. We're in a good spot. We're in a bad spot, right? It really makes you think about the different aspects that build up to what you talked about, or sales department or a sales team or a true sales force.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. I thought it was really interesting. I got a lot out of it, but I'm curious to ask, what inspired it, right? What kicked this whole thing off? What made you sit down and say, I need to make this that everybody else can consume because it's going to have this bottom line impact?
Yeah, so this was 10 years in the making. Yeah, I had asked the questions in this assessment tool, just, in happenstance of prospective clients. I talked with a senior executive, and then it evolved into, we have a group of executives together. Let's see how they feel about various aspects of the sales organization. So I put something together in Word. And now it really crystallized, and it's in an assessment tool. And the website is assessmysales.com. And we'll show you that in just a moment. And it's a free assessment. So if you think we came to sell you something, we did not. It's a free assessment tool. This is my way of giving back to the sales community. But one of the things that I saw happen is companies would use an assessment instrument to hire salespeople. Can you sell? And I think there's a place for that in the hiring process.
Sure.
What didn't exist, and this is why I put this together, is an assessment tool for business owners, for executives, for sales leaders that answers this question. Have we built the sales organization framework that can produce the results that we want? It's a mirror test. This is not a test that's going to make you feel good. That's not the purpose of this assessment. This is designed to help you to see where you have blind spots and how to find those opportunities to mature the sales organization. See, Sean used the expressions before. For sales organizations, there's 3 expressions used synonymously: sales department, sales team, sales force. I don't use those as synonyms. I use those as stages of sales organization maturity. So sales organizations commonly start in that first phase as a sales department, the elementary stage. Very little structure, inconsistent results, hire a couple salespeople, hope for the best. Then over time, with management guidance and support, there's an evolution to a sales team. And that's the emerging stage. And that's characterized by an understanding and sharing of best practices. The ultimate goal, Sean, this is where we got to get to, is the sales force stage. And I don't mean the CRM.
Right.
I'm talking about the stage where a sales organization is fully optimized and performs at the highest levels. Why? Because it's founded on process. When you have a sales department, just like the example I shared earlier, entirely dependent on the salespeople. If a top salesperson leaves, it's catastrophic to the organization. How are we going to replace it? It was interesting. I could look at that organization's results, and I could see when a new person came in, when someone left. As soon as we were founded on the sales organization framework, it just kept going up. Little blips, but nothing like the extreme that they had before. That's when you get to that Salesforce stage. So what happens is the sales organization, I should say the goal of that sales organization is to mature through those stages. And in this assessment, there's 6 components. There's new client acquisition, which we talked about a little bit, account management, sales management, hiring, onboarding, and sales compensation. And so what happens is you'll go through, and it takes about 10 minutes to complete. I said there wasn't a fee for it. There isn't, but there is a time investment. It'll take you about 10 minutes to get through it, and you'll become wiser as a result of it, because you'll say, okay, this is where we have opportunities to really grow and mature, and it also tells you how to do it. It tells you what's missing.
Yeah. I love that. 10 minutes, that's easy, right? Like, that's what we're trying to do. But again, raise awareness, right? Bring people into the conversation.
Exactly.
Really make people think critically about this. And I'm curious because, earlier in the conversation, you already touched on, a good example, related to client acquisition.
Yes.
I think something that's near and dear to all sales leaders is the growth of their team, right? And doing it, right? Because it's really expensive to hire and fire, right? That's a burden. So we think about, I think I'll combine 2 of these aspects, right? Both the hiring and the onboarding.
Okay.
And thinking about that in the framework of the assessment, how does that need to mature? How can that mature? What's a good takeaway for everybody here with us today?
Well, and Sean, I've been working with ZoomInfo for a number of years, and I'm a sales contrarian.
Yeah.
And so I'm from the school that says there's no such thing as a great salesperson. And I always get looks like, what do you mean there's no such thing as a great salesperson? So I can prove it. I'll ask the sales leaders, how many of these so-called great salespeople, great track record, strong resume, polished look, have you hired and they failed in your organization? If you believe in great salespeople, you also have to sign up for one of 2 of the following, because you believe in great salespeople. Either that salesperson showed up on your doorstep and completely forgot how to sell, or your company is the worst company in the history of business to sell for. Which is it? See, the issue is the placement of the word great.
Sure.
I said I don't believe in great salespeople. What we should be looking for is the right salespeople with the potential to be great in that sales organization. Yeah. And that's where an assessment instrument could be helpful in the hiring process. But what's missing, and I'll use that spectrum like we talked about, sales department, sales team, and sales force, is that we'll be looking at the sales department phase for a great salesperson.
Sure.
You know what I mean? A great prospector, a strong closer. If those were the only 2 measurements of success, hiring would be super easy, but it's not. The factors that would lead someone to succeed, fail, or underperform in a role are different for every sales role in every company. Right. So before we can evaluate sales talent, we need to understand what those factors are and evaluate candidates relative to those factors. So at one end, at the sales department phase, we're just saying, hey, we got to find some great salespeople. The maturation process gets us to a point where at the sales force stage, we say, you know what? We know what the factors are that would lead someone to succeed, fail, or underperform here. And we have a process in place to evaluate sales candidates against those performance factors.
Yeah.
So now you mentioned onboarding. Again, another aspect that is highlighted in this assessment. So we said we believe in great salespeople. So we don't need to do any onboarding. Just hand them the phone book or give them a list and say, go have at it. Mm-hmm. That's not what the hiring process provides. What it yields is someone with the potential to be great in that role. We need an onboarding experience. I don't mean the new hire paperwork. I mean a bridge program that takes the knowledge and skills that you loved so much in the interview process that you extended an offer to bridge them with success in the role. And again, a lot of organizations don't have that, and that's what's highlighted in this assessment tool.
Yeah, and I think it's remarkable, and I think it's one of those things that I think maybe is almost taken for granted at times. Is we've just the age old, we've always done it that way, right? We've always done it that way.
Right.
It's a scary thought.
It is.
And I think the other part of this that I definitely want you to touch on, right, as part of the assessment, and one of those 6 key factors is your sales compensation, right?
Yes.
That's everyone's favorite conversation, right? But
it is.
Want to make sure it's set up in a way that, right, it's truly tied to the outcomes that we're really trying to drive, and it's it's fair, and it's also an incentive, right? Because we would love for that to be, but the maturity of that. How do you think about that?
So, Sean, I'm going to start an expression. You fill in the blank. You're only as good as your blank sale. Your last sale. That is the worst expression in sales. And that is the foundation of most compensation plans. All the emphasis is on yesterday. Sales leaders are measured, evaluated. If you've ever sold a business, it's what's coming. That's why we have a pipeline and we forecast. So again, when we look at compensation, if it's only rewarding for yesterday, okay, great. We did some good things yesterday. What about tomorrow? Because we're always looking for growth. And that's a highlight that's shown in the assessment. Another common one I see, we give salespeople quotas or goals, whatever you'd like to call them, and they have a compensation plan. And at the elementary stage, when you have a sales department, you don't connect quota performance with earnings. I don't know if you've seen that, Sean. There's a lot of companies out there, they say, here's your quota, but your performance relative to quota has nothing to do with how you get paid. So it's background noise. They don't take any ownership of the goal. Why should they? It doesn't affect what's most important to them, which is how they get paid. And again, these are things that are not only highlighted. So the assessment's not just going to say, here's something you're missing. It's going to say, here are things that you can do that will get you to the Salesforce stage. So again, that website is assessmysales.com.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think the question I'd want to ask too, because, as an audience member, I think this is where my head might go is, we're talking about maybe 3 stages, right? Department to team to true sales force.
Right.
In your opinion, how long does that really take, right? Like a lot of these changes in this maturity and the adoption of a new way of thinking could take some time. You got to be patient, I imagine, right? And that might be part of it. But what's it going to take? What's the investment level, and how long is it going to take a company that's at the department level to get all the way to the sales force?
That's a great question, and that's going to be different for every sales organization. But what's most important, Sean, every little step you take to mature the sales organization translates to top and bottom line results. So you don't have to be all the way over here or over here. Every little step that you take in that organization maturity exercise, in that process, leads to top and bottom line results.
Yeah, certainly. I think about this now in totality, right? You get a sales leader to sit down and complete this assessment, or a full sales department. Let's start there, right?
Right.
How does somebody take action on this meaningfully, right? I think it's one thing I think it's the strategy versus the execution of a plan, right? It's when you get the feedback, but you might not know where to start. Of the maybe the 6, right? What's maybe the order of operation? Where should somebody start?
Yeah. Sean, you're a great straight man, because here's the other aspect that I'm providing. Again, there is no fee for this. So you get your report and it has all this information. Where do I start? What's the priority? I'm offering a complimentary consultation for anybody who takes the assessment to walk through your results and help you identify where the low-hanging fruit is, where you should best invest your time to get the results that you want.
That's amazing. I didn't know that, so I couldn't have possibly teed you up for that.
But it's in the assessment. Actually, when you complete it on the report, there's a spot there to schedule your consultation.
That's talk about making it easy, right? 10 minutes and a link.
Exactly.
That's what we're after. Well, what I want to do ultimately here is, maybe we're getting a little bit closer to the end of our time together today, Lee, is, a quick step back from the assessment as a whole, but back to the original topic, right? Is your sales org set up for success? Mm-hmm. This is a tremendous way to go in and ask real questions about things that I think would plague any sales leader, right? Just set up, onboarding, all these different things. Outside of the framework of the assessment, though, right? In just the current time, right? This is kind of calling back to a question I asked earlier about 12 months ago, how it's a little bit different, but I'll do this from my own experience. I oversee and work with the sales development team here at ZoomInfo. That team is quite large, and being able to get feedback from frontline SDRs about the kind of landscape of today, objections we get, pushback that we get. I think it's really interesting because the challenge is, I think, real, and I think there's not one. And I think every company has a different pushback of, they're not spending or they're growing or they're not growing. And I'm just curious, like the advice you'd offer, because I think it's one of those things that the challenge is real. The landscape and the sales climate is a little bit different. There's internal and external factors. But I think it starts with a look in the mirror. I just simply wanted your advice for our audience today on the reality of that. Like, coming to grips with it and understanding we might have to make some changes. They might have to start internally. What are your words for the group here today?
So there's two parts. And the first one is obvious. Gather information. Make sure you're listening to your team and hearing from them what they're experiencing. But there's a second part that gets us in trouble quite often. We need a filter. Yeah. For example, I hear this story. The salespeople say, gosh, if it was only bigger, we could sell a ton of this. So company makes a huge investment. They make it bigger. Yeah, this is good. Yeah. But if it was rounder, oh my gosh, we'd go gangbusters. So they invest again and they make it rounder. Gosh, but if it also had little boxes on it, oh my gosh, it would be forever. It would be unbelievable. So the point is, you need a filter to understand what's real and what's an excuse, right? And in those examples, and I've had countless clients over the years where they have made those investments and they're looking for the revenue. Go, where is it? You said we needed this. I got you this. Where is it? It's like, where's the beef? It's not there. Didn't get it. So we need to get that information. We need to listen to our teams, but we've got to have a filter so that we're understanding what's real and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hear them out, right? But understand what we can actually do something about, what we can't, what's truly affecting us.
What should we do something about?
True. Very true. Cool. Well, before we wrap up, Lee, and I've certainly appreciated your time and obviously your insight, and I hope the audience has as well, as much as I have. But real quick before we do, I wanted you to hit one more time those two links that they would be able to go to. I know we've also dropped that on LinkedIn as well, so they'll have access.
Perfect.
We wanted to hit that one more time on our way out.
Yep. So assessmysales.com. That's where the assessment tool is. The conversation we had about the target client profile, again, this is a tough one to remember, targetclientprofile.com, and you can download that worksheet that will help you have such clarity on the right business to pursue.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing that. Everybody who's joined us today, thank you for jumping in for the conversation. Lee, absolute pleasure. Thank you for your advice.
Same here, Sean. Thank you.
And obviously your resources for everybody. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Thank you for coming out, and we will see everybody again soon. All right.